Paxson was aware that he wasn't all that settled either. Hero status notwithstanding, he was always looking for something better to do with his life. Much of his time, he felt, was drifting, following through with his mother's expectations and the family's needs, and ignoring his own. Money for food and clothing was a life requirement, and it had to come from somewhere. In this case, it had to come from running the family business. The trouble was that as a prospect for his life's work, it was far from satisfying, but he had never found anything else, or at least anything that excited him sufficiently to justify moving away from cargo hauling and into what might turn out to be a reasonable alternative. Yet, he found himself wondering, in the days following his encounter with Arcannon and uncovering of the sword of Lee's strange power, if perhaps he wasn't on the verge of doing so. His discovery was exciting and seemed indicative of better things to come. That he had managed to unlock the sword's power and wield it, that he could use it as a weapon against even the darkest sorcery, was both awe-inspiring and thrilling. It was an important responsibility, laden with possibilities, and he wanted to take advantage of them. It made him remember some of his ancestors, the ones who had carried the sword on remarkable quests and accomplished great feats. Roan, Morgan, and Quentin Lee, Lee's one and all. It also made him think more carefully on Arcannon's involvement with the sword. The sorcerer, he now believed, had known what the weapon could do when he first saw it. That he would try to come after it at some point seemed almost certain. But how would the sorcerer go about it? And what could Paxson do to prevent it from happening? Certainly he had managed to escape once, but he had to admit that Arcannon was far more skilled and experienced with using magic than he was, and a second encounter might not turn out as well for him as the first one had. Yet his options were limited by his circumstances. He was locked into fulfilling his family's needs, making cargo hauls, and staying in Lee, and into living with one eye open while sleeping, and looking over his shoulder at every sound and shadow while awake. He thought about moving away. Maybe it was time. Another man, someone with flying and business skills, could be brought in to run their air freight service. He could find another city with another kind of work that would better suit him and help keep his family safe by removing himself and the sword from the picture. Maybe Arcannon would lose interest in the talisman if it wasn't around, and the danger would fade after a year or so, and he could come home again. He spent much of his time mulling this over, considering the risks and benefits and looking for a sign that would indicate which way he should turn. On the first day of the third week following his return from Wayford, that sign appeared. He was working down on the airfield, mending the frayed ends of lengths of radiant draws that served as replacements for ones that had broken mid-light when a man approached, coming down from the airfield manager's office at a slow, steady pace. Paxton had never seen him before, but he knew what he was the moment he caught sight of him. Black robes that reached to the ground and covered him from head to foot. A deep-set hood pulled back in the midday sun, and a silver medallion with a hand clasped about a burning torch marked him instantly as a druid. Druid. Paxton put down his tools and stood, a dark premonition forming in his chest, quickening his heart. The stranger walked up to him, his blue eyes bright and cheerful. "Well met, Paxton Lee. My name is Sebek. I serve in the 4th Druid Order." He held out his hand and Paxton shook it. Sebek was not particularly tall or imposing looking. If anything, he was slight of build and rather bookish in appearance, and he seemed very young, but there was an intensity to his gaze and a confidence in his manner that let Paxton know not to misjudge him. "Your robes and medallion give you away," the Highlander observed, releasing the other's hand. "Can I help you?" "It might be the other way around." Sebek gave him a brief smile. "Is there somewhere we can go to talk?" Paxton knew what he was suggesting, that it would be better not to talk out in the open, where they could be seen, that whatever the druid wanted to say would be better said in private. Paxton glanced around, trying to think where the best place might be. "Perhaps we could go up to your home and sit outside in the yard while we talk," Sebek suggested suddenly, revealing he knew more than a little about Paxton already. Paxton didn't argue. Together, they walked up from the airfield, skirting the edge of the city to reach the roadway leading to his home. Paxton watched the druid out of the corner of his eye, still taking his measure, trying to decide what this was all about, even though he was afraid he already knew. It had to be about his confrontation with Arcanon. It was the only thing he could imagine the druids would be interested in, although he wasn't sure how the Order had learned of it. He worried it might be because he had summoned the magic of the Sword of Lee, and they had a way of tracking such magic. He worried they intended to take his sword away from him. Once they had climbed the hill, a task Sebek accomplished without breaking a sweat, they sat down together on the porch steps. His mother called out from inside, then appeared in the doorway, brushing flour from an apron and smiling. The smile dropped away when she saw Sebek. "Well met," she greeted the druid quickly, putting the smile back in place. "I'm Zetha Lee." The young druid stood. "Sebek of the 4th Druid Order." Something in his manner made her smile widen, in spite of what Paxton recognized as her obvious discomfort. "Welcome to our home, Sebek. I've just baked cookies. Would you like some?" So Paxton and Sebek sat together on the porch, eating cookies and drinking cups of ale, while looking out over the city. For a while, neither said anything, concentrating on their eating and drinking, lost in their separate thoughts.